Hello, this is Just Listen, hosted by George. Today is March 6, 2024. Today I want to talk about the U.S. government policy on the Abraham Accords and the effects on the current Hamas and Israel war. This is important to you as a voter and a taxpayer because the impact of this policy will be felt by us for the next 10 or 15 years. I want to talk about what the Abraham Accords did, how the policy affected the region in general, and then I wanted to talk about, are the Arabians paying anything for us, meaning the U.S., providing humanitarian aid to the Palestinians? Let's talk about the first one. What are the Abraham Accords? So without getting into a deep narrative about what it is, I'm going to post the big article that I found so you can read through that. But what it did was it's a series of treaties normalizing relationships between Israel, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Sudan, Morocco. And also Egypt was involved, Jordan, and it's called the Abraham Accords in honor of Abraham, the patriarch of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, which I think is very important for the discussion in general. What that meant is that these Arabian countries were ready to make peace the first time in maybe 100, 200 years. And the implications for the region were or are that the people could live in peace and prosperity, and that there was a concerted effort for Israel to be a part of the Arabian Peninsula, pretty much, because they are the only main religion that wasn't Islamic. The second one is how the policy affected the region. Well, we've seen since October that the relations between Hamas, which is the government of the Palestinians, and the rest of the region are in contradiction to each other. Why is this important at this time? If you look at the article, it talks about three things. It talks about the Palestinian leaders, after the Abraham Accords were approved by these countries, the Palestinian Authority called the UAE-Israel agreement a total betrayal and attacked the UAE. That means that when it was signed in 2020, there was a lot of rhetoric going between Hamas and the Arabian countries. Hamas specifically said that this agreement served the Zionist narrative and that the Arab states should continue to engage in anti-normalization. Now, the Arabs didn't like what Hamas said, and the big Saudi prince, Bandar bin Sultan, did an interview criticizing the Palestinian leadership. That was major. I don't really understand why the mainstream media didn't cover this a lot, because this is what set the table, in my view, for Hamas to attack Israel and what led to the conflict. The Arabians, the majority of them, they want peace. They're not interested in attacking Israel. These pockets of extreme Islamic faith people are the ones that are wanting Israel to give up their sovereignty and basically leave the whole region to the Palestinians. Now, here is something that's very interesting as well. According to a poll by the Palestinian Center for Policy and Research, 80% of Palestinians describe their feelings towards the Abraham Accords as treason, abandonment, and insult. That was something that was never said. Before I read that, I didn't have a clue what that means to our policy. Is that the common people living in that region agree with Hamas. That means that they are in line with Hamas attacking Israel. Now, that might not be popular, but we have to look at the facts. The facts point to that. The last one is, are the Arabians paying anything for the Palestinians for the humanitarian aid? As you are aware, the United States started dropping aid into the occupied territories. We're talking about northern Gaza, the Gaza in general, etc. Who is helping us to do that? Who's helping us fund that? That's why I'm looking at it. So we need background for just a second. So in 17 years, Saudi Arabia has given Palestine, that area, $6 billion for economic aid, education, etc. Okay, well, prior to October 7th, if you look at how Palestine looks, you can go to YouTube and see what the country looks like. It appears that the people are poor, they're not in the middle class, and they don't seem to have any direction except for not liking the Israelis. The U.S., United Kingdom, European countries, like I've told you in previous podcasts, are funding the Palestinians and Hamas, even though 80% of the people living in the country are saying that they disagree with our policy on the Abraham Accords. So that's interesting. The people in the United States are great. We want to help people. We want to promote democracy. Yet, we get this kind of backlash from them. In 2022, like I told you in a previous podcast, we gave the Palestinians $343 million in 2022, as opposed to China pledged $1 million, Russia pledged $2 million. So when you pledge your money, that means that there have been no transactions. So they haven't given them anything. Like I stated a couple of minutes ago, with this humanitarian aid, the U.S. is exclusively paying for that, which means that the U.S. taxpayer is doing that. Why is this important? We have to be good stewards of U.S. taxpayer money. And like I've said in previous podcasts, our hearts are in we are trying to help. When we have people in the country who are protesting against us for our policy on the Hamas-Israel war, you have to wonder if they even know what the Abraham Accords are. Meaning, most of the Arabians want peace, and they were not interested in Palestine having a state. The other piece of that is that when you immigrate to the United States and you become a citizen, we have to be very careful when we're looking at American interests. And there seems to be a conflict with people coming into our country the last 10 or 15 years and basically saying that the U.S. is attacking other countries, especially when the other sides started it. And also, Israel is our ally. And it's okay to do peaceful protests. However, please get your facts straight. How is attacking the Israeli civilians who were at a festival being justified by some of these protesters? The American taxpayer is being very generous to wanting to help to make the change. We've been doing it for 20 years with the Palestinians, and I do not see them changing their policy. This generational hate against Israel is the main problem. The other part is, if you want change, like I said in the previous podcast, you do that through nonviolence. And quite frankly, if the Hamas government in Palestine would have done nonviolent demonstrations against Israel, they would have won. The Israelis, they don't want to fight. They don't want to be having combat with the Palestinians every 10 or 12 years. They are ready for peace. The American taxpayer cannot keep funding the Palestinians as they are right now, when 80% of them consider Israel their mortal enemies, and they are passing that from generation to generation. This is Just Listen, hosted by George. Let me know what you think.